Cehrs. Adele is the CEO of When and How Agency, a crisis communications firm. She is a leading expert on communications and has spoken twice at the United Nations in the last 12 months. She was one of the few crisis workers in Puerto Rico after the hurricane. In addition, Adele is a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal and Inc. magazine, as well as the author of the book Spike Your Brand. The Washington Business Journal named her a business Wonder Woman. Her agency represents clients that include ASAE, Lockheed Martin, DuPont, and Vice President Joe Biden. Please join me in welcoming Adele.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Destiny, for that introduction. I really appreciate everyone's time today. I really want to make this webinar super actionable and very practical for you guys to use a lot of the information I am giving you today. I have been doing this for 20 plus years, and I have never given away as much information about how to pitch and secure media as I am on this webinar. So I hope you guys have a blank notebook and a pencil or paper in front of you, because I think you're going to be taking a lot of notes. So I'd like everybody who's on the webinar right now to take a minute and close their eyes and think of the biggest internet marketer there is. Most people would say Gary Vaynerchuk, because Gary is everywhere. He's on YouTube, he's on all these channels, he's on Facebook all the time talking about the virtues of social media. But interestingly, the thing that he does the most with his own personal brand is get on traditional media. He's in so many different publications, he's on television on a regular basis, and this only further amplifies his personal brand and message. And so one of the biggest influencers in social media still uses traditional media. So when people say traditional media is dead, or it doesn't have as much credibility, or, hey, well, let's just replace all our traditional media with social media, I call BS. So I really want to have this conversation with you guys. I want to teach you how to get into the media, because when you get in the media, it just creates a level of expertise that almost no one around you can match. And I believe it doesn't matter how much noise you make if you're not credible. And the way you get credible is by being in mainstream media publications. So how do you get noticed by top tier media? How do you get heard? Who do you target and when? What do you say? And how do you make the most of every media opportunity for your business or for your association to drive sales or membership? I think at the end of the day, if traditional media doesn't serve some kind of business purpose or ROI, what's the point? So, I've gotten a ton of leverage from being a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. Obviously when people call me up and they need crisis communications help, to be able to say I contribute to such a well-known, respected publication is an amazing differentiator that most of my competitors can't say. They can look at my analysis on corporate brands, and they can see it in one of the world's biggest, best, most respected newspapers. So, that is an incredible differentiator. How do we create those differentiators for you and your organization? How do we get you consistently in the media? And by consistently, what I mean is like maybe 2 to 5 times per month in different publications, whether it's podcasts, on television. I have an actual special section on how to get you on television. And the good news, folks, is I have actually done this, and I've done it recently. There's a lot of people out there who talk about media relations, but they haven't really either done it themselves or they haven't done it recently. And the game changes all the time. How you get attention changes almost on a regular basis, on a daily basis, if not an hour by hour basis, considering how fast the news cycle is moving. So I'm going to give you some really magic tips to make journalists really appreciate you as a source, to make those journalists put you on the short list of people they'll reach out to, even if you aren't the right expert for that topic, and create some real value for your association. So here's the biggest thing. The media do not want story ideas. That's their job, not yours. In fact, if you go to them with story ideas, they almost always reject them because A, they didn't think of it first. B, they don't want that from you. They want trends and they want expertise and experts that are going to help back up what their assertions are about certain things that are going on. And typically the media are very knowledgeable about their beat or their topic area, but they have surface level knowledge, right? They're knowledgeable about a lot of different things. And I started out my career as a journalist. I actually worked for George Magazine, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s publication, for those of you who remember. Then I was a daily newspaper reporter for the Asbury Park Press. And I shortly and quickly got promoted to USA Today on a national business beat. So I used to get pitched by public relations professionals all the time. And, there are certain things that stand out. And there are certain people who I kept going back to over and over and over again. They were on my short list. And it's because they always presented trends and they offered me up the type of experts I was looking for because they read my column on a regular basis. They knew what I was looking for, and they just had this kind of intuitive sense of what I needed. So I'm going to teach you how to provide that to people and how to really structure your outreach so they want to come back to you over and over again. So, as Destiny mentioned, I am a contributor myself. I was a full-time journalist, and I am now, the CEO of a media agency and have been for the past, decade or so. So I do this on a regular basis. I get people in the media all the time, including Vice President Joe Biden. I did his big cancer initiative in less than 7 days because the vice president had called me up and was like, oh my gosh, we're in a crunch. We really need some help. We need some media outreach. I typically don't try to do media outreach anymore, but, you really can't say no to Joe Biden. So I said yes. And in 7 days, I garnered 225 media placements for his cancer initiative. Now, yeah, you can say, hey, it's cancer, it's Joe Biden. But actually, cancer is kind of a tough topic to pitch. It's not something a lot of people want to talk to. They don't want to talk about it. It's a tough topic. So you have to create something around the topic that makes it interesting and more palatable for people. So that's what I did. I created a trend, and I'm going to show you guys a number of different pitches and how to actually reach out to the media. So myths about getting into the media, just kind of talking about this a bit. 85% of the people that I talk to feel completely invisible. They really can't do anything to get acknowledged or to get their expertise acknowledged. They think that there's a magical factor that is making other people get media coverage. And that is simply not true. It's just about really reaching out to the right people within your sphere of influence, and making yourself or your organization top of mind to those people. And there's this other idea of you have to know someone to get into the media. Of the 225 people I reached out for Joe Biden, I knew maybe, I would say 26, 27 of them. All the rest were completely new contacts that I reached out to, I followed up with, I took care to get them what they wanted, and they are now all in my database and people that I can reach out to and go to for future media stories. So it is almost like, doing media relations is almost like having a CRM system in itself, because I have records of people that I talk to that are still at media outlets from 10 years ago. And I could pick up the phone and say, hey, did you, it was so fun working with you on that story in 2002 about blah, blah, blah. And they will remember, they will appreciate the fact that I remembered it. And it's just one of those situations where media relations is sort of like membership. It's sort of like sales, and like really any other business thing in that nature. So, There's an old saying in the media relations field that, media relations is a numbers game. The more you send out, the more you get. And they say that because they don't know anybody. They keep going back to the same 7 to 10 people. And what I would say to you is I want you guys to really expand the types of people you reach out to, the types of reporters you reach out to, and we're going to help you do that on this webinar. So I want to give you a couple of specific steps that I want you to do. Do you guys ever see a newspaper article or watch a broadcast interview and like scream at the television and think, man, why didn't they make this point? I should seriously be the source for this interview, not this person who's being interviewed. But, that is one of the first steps to kind of coming up with who your media doppelganger is, right? Like who's making appearances you can replicate, who is in publications, what organizations are getting, the type of media coverage that you desire. If your media doppelganger is getting a ton more coverage, it's because they're reaching out, they're being proactive, but also there is a need and a desire for other experts within the field that you can contribute to. So I'd like you all to identify who your media doppelganger is, and how you can replicate their success by really analyzing why they were chosen, what topic they spoke on, what interesting things they said, but also what was missing in what they talked about that you can add to the conversation, because that is one of the most important things and that can really help you get an edge over getting media opportunities that are really right for your organization. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to validate. I want you to validate reporters. They are, reporters, people who go into journalism, and I can say this with, respect and also direct experience. When I was a journalist, and I was for the first 6 years of my career, it's all for the glory. It's all for finding truth. It's for the community. It really is, a labor of love because you get paid like pittance. You are really just scraping by as far as what you're getting paid. And so you really want respect for your writing. You want to feel like people read your stuff. They're interested in what you have to say and what you've written. And if you do that, if you say, I noticed something interesting and here's what I can add to it, if you just validate what they've said in the past and how you can add to it, members of the media will respond so well to it, and you'll become a media darling because they want to feel like people are acknowledging their point of view. So there's going to be some stuff you disagree with, and I would encourage you to push back on some journalists. I mean, do it in a respectful way, but some of the best emails and relationships I built up with either PR people or business people or experts are the people who are like, hey, I read your piece on XYZ. I really loved it. Here are the things I loved about it. But I really wish you would have discussed X, Y, and Z. And there are rarely journalists who will not respond well to that because they want to know what they may have missed. They want to know what they can add to their next story. And, most journalists have an opportunity to do a follow-up piece. So, maybe you weren't in the first article that was right for you, but you might be in the second one. So really keep track of when you want to scream at the newspaper or scream at the TV or that trade journal and you're just like, oh my God, that's so wrong. Keep track of that. Keep a journal of those things and then go back to that person and say, hey, here's how I could have contributed to that differently. That's going to be really, really huge for you. I want to first talk about what's a pitch, right? And essentially it's a concisely written note. It's occasionally verbal. And it's a pitch for media opportunities, like on a television segment that's sent to a writer, editor, or a producer. It could be a television segment. It could be, it could be a webinar. It could be a podcast. It could be a speaking engagement. It could be, a regular contribution for a trade publication or newspaper. But a pitch is a concisely written note. And so you really, really need to be able to articulate what it is you want to get across to the audience in as concise a manner as possible. And I'm going to give you really, really specific ways at which you can start thinking about your pitch that you probably see every day and you just didn't realize it. So I'm going to give you some pitch examples, and I'm going to dissect them with you so that you can get a sense of how you can pitch and how you can really use this to your benefit. So here's some pitch examples. First name, just what you wanted, another pitch, obviously have some fun with it, right? Sort of. I think I might have something that interests you, but you be the judge of that. I'm from association name. We are one line, guys. You cannot have 6 lines about what your association is or what it does, like one quick and concise line. My idea is an idea that's X, Y, and Z. I thought this might interest you because, of the following reason. Maybe you read an article they've written before on this topic. Maybe you saw them tweet something out about it. Maybe you saw them post something on their Facebook page about it. I need your help. Please pick from one of the following convenient responses. Is this idea awesome? Do it. I'd write it and publish about it in a heartbeat. Guys, you are being self-deprecated. Most PR people take everything they do so seriously that it's so fun to have some levity in a in a pitch like this. It's not bad, but it needs some work. Please feel free to embellish here, be as polite or scathing as you see fit. I have a thick skin, and you do have to have a thick skin. I mean, some of these reporters are really surly, right? They're just like angry because they get hundreds of pitches in their email box every day. But this kind of a pitch is really going to make you stand out because, the journalists are like, okay, I can have fun with this person. I can be honest with them. And 3, awful. Go back to the drawing board, you chump. Thanks for reading this far. Even if you just hit a reply with 1, 2, 3, I'd be most grateful. Have a great day. Guys, I have gotten my clients into the New York Times with this pitch. I have gotten my clients into the Harvard Business Review with this pitch. And I know it sounds crazy, but it works every time because people just want it to be super quick. They want to pick the thing that's right for them, or they want to tell you it's awful and walk away. You do have to have a thick skin, but for the most part, people will send you good feedback. They might say something like, hey, we already covered something like this, or hey, this isn't right for the following reasons. And sometimes it takes a while before you get into certain publications. Like, I was just published in the Harvard Business Review, and it took me quite a few times before they would take my submission because I keep saying like, hey, I could talk about this or I could talk about that. And they would come back to me every time. They're like, okay, well, this isn't right because you already had an expert talk about this. Can you get more in depth about these 3 things? And it really helped me get my first HBR article, which, saying you've been in the Harvard Business Review, there's just so much cachet in that. And again, it's a differentiator. It helps you create expertise and authority in your field that is really hard to beat for your competitors. So that's a great pitch example, super fun, really easy to do, and something I would recommend. Everybody says, oh, you have to have a good story, but having a good story isn't good enough. There is this old saying in PR, if you get bit, if a man gets bitten by a dog, that's news. I'm sorry, if a dog bites man, that's news. But if the dog bites the guy, not so much. That's not news. Everyone else has to prove it. You have to prove what it is you're going to say, right? So here's the good news. Good ideas aren't good enough, and proving it is not that difficult. You need credible sources. Now, some of my academics on the line, some of my researchers on the line are going to cringe when I explain how I do this. But it's really good advice, and it's something that has worked almost every time. You have to get credible sources, people who are not you, people who are not necessarily your members, but people who are in different areas of expertise who can also add to what your members have to say. So if you could get 3 people from, 3 different fields, and one of those people are one of your members, and they all conclude the same thing about stats that are coming out about your industry, your profession, what it is you do, those stats can be used in a pitch. You push it forward and you draw a different conclusion than what the statistics did. And all of a sudden, people start to look at you and your perspective as something that is something they respect. And I have a very specific example for you on this. But you can use research from publications like the Harvard Business Review, trade publications, academic papers, Gallup. There is so much research put out there every single day. I mean, I think .org even puts out research. So use the research to your, to your abilities, and then get your experts to talk about the research and what they agree or disagree with, and then get other outside experts. So perfect example, I was working, with a client who thought, my building that I'm building in this neighborhood is going to have huge economic value to the neighborhood. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds like a good story. That's a good idea. And it sounds like something that's going to be positive for the neighborhood, but prove that it's going to have positive economic impact. So who do you guys think we reached out to other than the person who was building the building? Well, one of them was a local business owner within the neighborhood who would be positively impacted, right? Because we had the local angle. And then the next was an academic from a local university who was an expert on economics. And our client was featured in a full article in the Washington Post about how this one building would make an impact in the neighborhood. And because we gave the newspaper reporter all of the sources they needed to put the article together, our client was featured a lot more than they normally would have been had they just been in a roundup piece or a piece with lots of other people who were building and who were creating buildings in that neighborhood, which was an up and coming neighborhood. So that's kind of how you create those full impactful stories that the reporters really, really value. And when you deliver a story on a silver platter like that, you become, somebody that the media are like, oh my gosh, I have to work with Adele because she's going to give me everything I need. And I set up all 3 interviews, and I made sure everything was what it should have been. And the piece came out really positive for my client. So I want to talk about the rule of 3. A lot of articles, things that you read about, there's always 3 statistics they provide, and then some kind of a twist, or 2 statistics and a twist in your thinking about a particular topic or area of expertise. And these things can be really, really helpful because people can't hold more than 3 things in their head at one time. It's just hard for them to comprehend a complex idea that is not in 3s. So I think associations really, really suffer with this because they have so much to say about a really, really specific topic that it becomes very overwhelming to the reporter because they don't know what to put in the piece because they've been given so much information that it's information overload, and it's not something that really works for them. So, create the rule of 3 for your pitches or anything that you put forth. So here's a perfect example of a rule of 3. Now, this is a really, macabre topic, obviously, the idea of teen suicide being on the rise, but it's on the rise, and it's positioned in a trend piece, right? So this is the rule of 3 in a trend piece. We're seeing a troubling trend which spikes during college application and SAT season, and we think your readers should know about it. So right off the bat, I don't start out with the, hi, how are you? Reporters and people who are receiving pitches, they're on deadline. They do not have time for, niceties or like the hi, how are you, blah, blah, blah. They don't care. Just get right into the trend, get right into the story idea, and that's going to help you right off the bat. They're going to know that you're serious. Tell me as a reporter, when you're sending me these kind of pitches, why your story is relevant right now. Why is it newsworthy? Why is it something I should care about? Why is it something my reader should care about right now? You have to create timeliness in almost everything you do. So teen suicide is at a 20-year all-time high. Suicide is the second leading cause of death according to XYZ. And surprisingly, A+ students who seem happy are prone to bouts of depression that can go unnoticed and lead to suicidal thoughts. As college application increase pressure for some, teens may grow increasingly anxious. That's why the Mental Health Association has trained counselors who can explain why suicide is on the rise in teens, the warning signs, and what parents can do about it. If you'd like to schedule an interview, please contact me. So this kind of a pitch is like, I've got 2 statistics that tell you why I think this is relevant. I've got something that is sort of surprising that like A+ students are more prone to it than others. College applications, it's college application season, it's SAT season. It makes it why this pitch is really relevant right now to the people who are receiving this. And I got Richard Yep's group, the American Counseling Association, using very similar kind of setup to a pitch. We got them an Associated Press hit. Now, if you guys are not familiar, the Associated Press is a wire service, and a wire service sends out its stories to every newspaper in the entire nation, and that newspaper chooses whether or not they're going to pick up that piece. So this pitch was sent out to the Associated Press. They picked it up, and as a result, ACA got, I want to say, in one day, 165 media hits. But it is really, really hard to get the Associated Press to pay attention to what you're doing. So, the fact that I can set up a trend in a rule of 3 that they can use on broadcast, on TV, on really all across the country, this is a very evergreen pitch. It's a very, it's a very specific pitch, but it worked every time. So take a think about how you can create that rule of 3 for your association. What are some 3 statistics? What are 2 statistics that you agree with or you can have a surprising twist on? And this kind of pattern and formula and framework is really going to help you get the type of media you desire. Listen, at the end of the day, although there's a ton of fake news right now, so a lot of people may push back on me on this, having a cool story helps, but you have to use direct facts, not hyperbole, right? So the news story has to be written on its own merits. Being a cool story isn't enough to get you into the media. You have to have some kind of backup. You have to have some kind of proof. You have to have statistics, experts, people who are willing to back up what it is you're saying. And you can't use a lot of adjectives or flowery language because the media just really smell that and think of it as BS. So, really get down to the brass tacks, the who, what, where, when, and why of the story. Tell me why it's relevant now. Tell me why readers will care about it. Tell me why out of 100 stories that I'm getting in my inbox, why your story is more important than anyone else's. And, if you could do that concisely and use these pitch formulas and frameworks that I'm sharing with you today, you're going to get, media results. And when you guys get media results using these templates, I really want you guys to reach out to me and tell me about your cool successes because I'm going to be so happy about that. So here's another example. This is a cool trend example, right? So now this is a super fun one, right? It's experiential gifts. But guys, I am responsible for the experiential gift giving trend. This is one of the first experience gift giving companies that was out there. I created this trend. I made it a national sensation. We got this particular client with this pitch on Good Morning America, on Today's Show, on Ellen, on Oprah. We got them so much media attention. It was just insane. And when they hired my company, they were a startup, and they had something like $300,000 in revenue. And after our engagement, they had $1 million in revenue because they got so much media attention that people were just hitting their website all the time. They were, very involved in it. And this could be one of those things where it's a cool story on its own, right? It's a cool story to be the idea of giving an experience gift when that wasn't a thing back then, right? The fact that I could give you a biplane ride, or, go hang gliding, or captain your own yacht, or rock climb, whatever. That in itself is a cool story, but that's not what I focused on. I focused on creating a trend. I focused on the business value of the gift giving industry. I focused on how much people spend on gifts per year. I focus on the frivolousness of gifts and how it's already a trend in the UK. And that this company is pioneering this in the US, and how this is going to be something that they are going to want to care about and report on. And it didn't hurt that the guy who was, heading up the company was a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and somebody who had a lot of credibility. But that's not really what sold the story. What sold the story was this idea of a trend, and I proved the trend with some stats, right? The rules of 3. So you can use this for your association, whether you're a gift-giving company or not. You can figure out there are trends that are going on within your industry, and it really is your job to be the trend finder or the trend hunter within your organization. There are so many, fun ways to find it. One thing I can tell you that will help you with reporters is, how do you create a local angle? They want local sources and local experts, and they get really, really annoyed when you don't think about proximity. So obviously I could have, the previous example I gave you guys about the building company, I could have reached out to an economist pretty much anywhere around the country. Instead, I reached out to a local university and got an economist there because I knew that the reporter would appreciate the local angle. Even though the building company I was pitching was not a local company, having an expert helped me make a national company a local of local interest to reporters. So not only did I have a national story, I had a local story as well. So really getting the most bang for your buck and creating stories that have local impact is also something you can do. And you can do this by having sources that are, local to your neighborhood, who subscribe to the paper, or are viewers of the show if you're pitching television. So all very, very important. Here's an example of local growth, kind of talking to you guys about a very similar story to this. But, as you may know, the South Florida housing market is one of the nation's fastest growing. Here's some data. Here's a trend I'm seeing. Here's another market forecast I'm seeing. Here's how this expert is leading the charge with it. Would you be, interested in talking to this expert? And guys, I got the Miami Herald, I got 3 local Miami stories, and I got Telemundo as a result of this pitch. And I mean, this kind of stuff, these kinds of pitches, just really super concise ideas, helping people understand shifts that are happening within a market or an industry or a field of interest. I mean, I've done this for medicine as well. It really runs the gamut, but you have to create those 3 stats that, you then agree or disagree with, or your expert can comment on, and that creates that shift for you. So, I want to, open up the curtain a little bit and tell you guys how I got my column in the Wall Street Journal. Now, I have never told anyone this before. So, this is really, really great information and a really good way to pitch a publication or an outlet you've never pitched before. So I had someone on my team do this for me, but here's the expert pitch. Hope you're well. Not sure if we've ever communicated. I was previously at XYZ company. I was more in touch with folks like Eric Eichmann and Robert Messenger. These are all reporters who are currently at the Wall Street Journal. But I came across your column, Crisis of the Week, and found it to be a really refreshing take on corporate miscommunication and the plain old, what were they thinking? I was wondering if you regularly reach out to PR pros for comment and take on certain situations or blunders. Are you ready? Are you already set with a roster of experts? Are you open to getting the opinion of someone new for comment, perhaps? Looking forward to hearing from you. So this pitch was my intro into the Crisis of the Week column. This is basically how I got a regular opportunity to be in the Wall Street Journal. Now, it's important to note that I also have a book on the topic of crisis management, so that didn't help. That didn't hurt. I actually had to do a sample article and synopsis before they accepted me as a writer, but I was happy to do that for the Wall Street Journal. And then I was accepted, and I still am a regular contributor just from this pitch. So how can you guys use this for you, for your organization, for what it is you do? This is the kind of stuff that works. And I'm just name dropping 2 people he may know or that are his work colleagues. And I'm mentioning a specific column. I'm talking about how it's a refreshing take. I'm massaging his ego. I'm validating him. I'm asking him if he may take on other people. I'm not suggesting that I'm awesome and that he should take me on, but I'm saying, hey, are you open to it? Let's talk about it. This kind of approach works really, really well with journalists. So, in some instances, our pitches are so effective that I have people who have been in my media database for so long that they say stuff like, why didn't you call me first? I have people who say, you contacted the Washington Post, but you didn't contact me. How come you got this in Fast Company, but you didn't give it to me in Entrepreneur? That's when you have great media sources or people who really rely on you for great materials. And you guys can do this. This is so possible and so worth the extra effort that you're going to take on. Now, maybe some associations who are on the phone are like, Adele, there is not another thing I can put on my plate. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Now I'm reaching out to the media. The good news is I can reach out to the media for you. My firm does this for people, but you can use these templates and attempt it yourself, or you can hire a firm to be able to do it, or an individual consultant, whatever you guys think is best for your organization. But getting these publications, I'll tell you, the board is super happy when they see a list of really top tier publications that your organization has been in, because they really feel like you have your finger on the pulse of what they want and they're getting their message out to the media at large. So here's some really practical, helpful resources that I wanted to provide you guys that you can use right now. So, I want to talk about how to, I want to talk about how to reach out to reporters. How do you actually reach out to them? So you can direct message reporters via Twitter, not Facebook. Facebook is like too personal. It's too, I would not recommend that approach. I think the journalists really wouldn't like it. I've been pitched on Facebook, and every single time I'm like, ew, why are they reaching out to me? I don't know this person. There's not enough trust to create a Facebook message. You might want to join Slack channels with members of the media in them. And there are several of them where the media are reaching out and saying, hey, does anybody know a source on XYZ? And that's hugely helpful. Join Facebook groups with journalists in them. Facebook groups, not Facebook Messenger. Read their column and contact, and usually their contact information is listed in the article. It could be a Twitter handle, it could be an email address, but rest assured, if you send some kind of query to that email address, they are likely to respond if your pitch is interesting. If you want, you also can invest in the Cehrs account. Cehrs is a database of media contacts. I will tell you guys, it is steep. It's like $7,000 a year, and that's that's a big expense for my agency. But I obviously have, I have the subscription, or you pay a firm to make a list for you. Either of those options are going to be work. This is how you know who to pitch. I want you guys to help them help you. It really is important to jump on every opportunity that comes your way. If the media reach out to you and you can't fulfill their needs, reach out to someone else who can. I don't even care if it's not going to benefit you. It's going to benefit the reporter, and then they're going to see you as somebody they owe you one, and they'll reach back out. There's also a paid service called ProfNet. And what ProfNet is this great, service that's about $225 a month, and they send you regular opportunities that the media are looking for experts on or looking for people to comment on. Well worth the money spent there. I get a lot of, proactive in the moment pitches ready for my clients and get them through ProfNet. Another one is Help a Reporter Out. Last I checked, Help a Reporter Out was free, but there may be a small subscription fee to it. But again, this is when the reporters are saying, hey, does anybody have a source on XYZ? We need somebody to comment on this or that. Hugely, hugely helpful. The next one is be easy to reach, respond super quick, right? If you have an email address and you don't get back to them within a day, they're going to be mad. If they send you an email and, you respond to them as quickly as possible. I mean, if you could do it within 5 minutes, if you could do it within an hour, you'd be better off. I am consistently quoted in associations now, and I'm usually a last minute ad because they know they can reach out to me if they have something that that's breaking, because they know I'm super available. And if they call my cell phone, I will always answer. Give them what they want. If they are writing a story on, Nike, the Nike shoe incident, which is what associations now is writing on, give them what they want. They wanted the association's perspective on Nike's brand crisis. Okay, well, that's a little weird, but sure. Okay, I'm going to talk about Nike's brand crisis and how associations can learn from that. And I'm going to be on the ready, and I'm going to be flexible. And I'm going to give the reporter exactly what he or she wants. And make it work. Even if you aren't the right source, get them the right source. Find someone. Doesn't even matter if you're quoted. They will look at you as someone who is their savior and someone they will come back to over and over again. Here's some subject lines that will really knock them out. I think these are subject lines that are going to work almost every time. Do your viewers/readers make these mistakes when blank, right? Your story on blank, hint about what the pitch relates to. Applying something specific they wrote about before to the email, right? Positive sentiment, their story idea. Do not write story idea. That subject line is basically your, 5 to 7 word pitch. And they're not going to open the email if you write story idea, because they have a million emails with story idea in it. So use some of those subject lines, get creative, have some fun, and you'll be surprised at what you can do. Understand what is trending. What's a trending story? So right now, like the college admission scandal is hugely trending, right? Like that is such a topic right now, and something that people are just talking about all over the place, to the point where there's so many experts. What happens is the news media break a story like that kind of a scandal, and then like a day or two goes by, and what starts to happen is they start to reach out to experts because they want expert opinions on the next day story. So that's when you as associations can really, really weigh in, because your topic or subject matter experts, who are your members, are such experts and they want to get into the detail. But when the story first breaks, that's not the right time for those experts to be pitched. It's when the story's been out for a little while. That's when like the American Association of University College Professors can talk about the scandal, because they want to get more in-depth reporting when a story is a day or two old. So if you can think about the story in the beginning, the middle, and the end, and how you can have a perspective in all, in all parts of the news cycle, you can ride the wave of relevance for a really long time for you and for your organization. So think about this. I wrote a book called Spike Your Brand ROI, which talks about precisely how to identify when it is your organization is relevant. You can't comment on everything. It looks like you're jumping on the bandwagon. It really has to be a core issue to what it is your association does and what you have subject matter expertise on. Otherwise, you look opportunistic. So really, things that are core issues, that are timely, that are trending, are what you need to look for your association. So I have a special section in here on how to get on television. There is just, I think all of us growing up and even now, we are just also enamored by getting on television. And I can remember, one of the first times I was on television and a client just totally like threw me in. I was like, we can't be there, but you should be. And I was on MSNBC, and I was in this business show, and we were talking all about trends and weighing in on it. And I remember my husband who came with me, he's a total introvert. And we're at ABC studio, MSNBC studios. And my husband's like, oh my God, you're going to talk to that many people. I can't believe you're going to do this. I'm like, yeah, it's actually going to be really fun. And I had so much fun on the segment, and getting on television, people just really, it asserts your influence in a way that like nothing else. So here are some tips to get on television. And, these are some really good tips, guys, that I have talked to so many producers about over the years. And every single television show that's ever been on, I've gotten a client on. So television and getting people on television used to be a specialty of mine. So please pay attention. And these next couple slides are really, really helpful. So your assignment is to start on Monday or today, if that's the case, to watch 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on one major network. And you watch for 5 days in a row. And I have a couple of things that you need to look out for. Pay close attention to every time a new segment is introduced, topics that get the most airtime, the number of questions the host asks guests, and the average length of the guest's answers. Okay, you need to pay attention to all these different things. Write them down every single day. And I want you to think about, were the segments inside? Were they outside? Were they on location? Did the guests stay on topic, or did they ramble? What did you think about the guests? Were they likable? Were they interesting? Were they easy to listen to, concise? And what did you as the viewer learn, and how did you benefit? And another thing is, what's your idea for a segment? Why is the pitch going to be relevant to this show? What segment is it right for? What's your story? Why are you an expert? And how is your pitch visual? If you can think about all of these different things, but the best advice I can give you is this. And guys, buckle up, because this is a really, really good piece of advice. Your pitch is in the tease. And what I mean by the tease is, it's that intro into the next segment. So you hear that on-air personality say, and what's on next is blah, 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 blah. They usually provide an entire story idea in their tease. And the whole point of the tease is to get the viewer to stick around after the commercial break. So the tease will give you the exact framework to create a pitch that is right for that particular television show. So hugely, hugely important. Write down teases. And once you write those down, that's going to give you some great fodder for creating a pitch that's right and super concise. listen, there are also specific times where, outside experts have a better chance of getting on TV. And the reason why it's harder to get on TV, like during February, May, June, July, and November, is because they're having sweeps. It's called sweeps. Therefore, unless you fit into their special plans and themes, you will not get booked as an outside expert. You have a much better chance of getting booked in January, March. Yep. March, April, and October, when television producers are desperately looking for new ideas and guests. They need people to reach out to them. So guys, we're in the right month. Make it happen. We're not in sweeps. You've got to reach out to your local television. They're looking for experts. The last thing I'll say, or, a couple of last things I'm going to say, is find out the reporter's preferences. Once you get a reporter in your good graces, ask them questions like, do you like call, email, text? Are there certain types of stories you're especially looking for? You want me to keep you in mind? Are there daily deadlines or weekly meetings that I should keep in mind when I reach out to you? One of the worst things that you can do is reach out to a reporter or a producer when they're doing their editorial planning meeting. They hate that. They're really in strategy mode when most of the time they're in deadline mode. So you want to figure out what those are. And typically they're the same for publications or for television stations every single week. So, maybe a Monday or Friday for some news outlets is the bad time to call. So here's some follow-up techniques. After you send a pitch, just send that pitch, forward it, and this one line, any interest? That alone will increase the amount of pitches and times at which a reporter will get back to you. Just two words, any interest, ? This has worked very well for me and for my agency in getting people media. Another one is the in case you missed it. Putting that in the subject line and saying, hey, no immediate action needed here, but I wanted to make sure you saw this. If it's a press release or some piece of news that you think the media should be paying attention to, that's one great way to reach out to the media without being a bother. Another one is I saw your story on XYZ. I thought it was really helpful, and I added I want to add a new angle to the debate. I shared it around with my whatever group, right? So to make the reporter feel good, but then also, I wanted to show you about how I've added to the debate about this particular topic. So that is pretty much, how to get into the media, some really great, insightful tips for you guys. I hope that, you will go forth and really get some great media hits for your organization. It is possible. You can do this. It is super fun. Destiny, Sherry, any questions from the audience?
Let's see. It doesn't look like we have any questions just yet, but if you do have some questions for Adele, please go ahead and type in the chat bar. I was wondering, Adele, have you heard of the kind of like the PR, like you were mentioning the resources? It's called Meltwater. Have you heard of?
Yeah, so Meltwater, I'm not a big fan of Meltwater, and Meltwater, I don't think that it's necessarily worth the money to do Meltwater. Meltwater and Cision are sort of the same thing. Of the two, I think Cision is a little bit better. And if you buy a Cision subscription, you usually can add Meltwater onto it if you wanted to. But I think for the purposes of, PR folks and media relations folks or marketing folks at an association, I think the best thing you could do is either get a firm to make a list for you or get that subscription, because it's going to be hugely helpful.
Okay, it looks like we had a question come in. Thank you for that as well. Eva Montgomery is asking, how do you decide which pitch to use?
That's a good question. I mean, you mean which pitch type to use, Eve? I know we don't have regular feedback back and forth.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I think anytime you can create a trend for a reporter, you're going to be, a much more interesting source than other things. If you have experts, if you have several experts that you want to put forward, then definitely do the expert pitch. But creating a trend is something reporters just absolutely love. And you almost can't go wrong, especially with your initial outreach to a reporter to show them a trend that they may not have seen in a beat they've been covering. It's going to make you a really valuable resource for them.
Thank you, Adele. It doesn't look like we have any more questions at this time. Let's see if there's any more coming through. Give it a second.
Well, the last thing I'll just add is I really encourage you guys to study the news and what makes it, what makes news, what doesn't make news, like the patterns that exist within the news media. They've been the same forever. I see them so clearly because I've been doing it for a long time. But once you start to study these programs, study television shows, newspaper articles, trade publications, you're going to know that they're going to reach out to sources for certain things. And so if you can keep a file of what stories, pertain to your organization that you could have quoted on, then that's going to be a really valuable resource for the next year when you look back and say, okay, in March, they want people to comment on the idea of luck in business. And so I'm going to have my story ready for next year and 3 experts or a trend that I'm seeing within my industry ready in March, because I know that's going to be, that's going to be a topic that's going to get some attention.